I love the idea of bespoke. I love the idea of handcraft tailoring, but I don't necessarily want to learn it. But I really like your suits. I like how everything is handcrafted. How can I get a suit from you?
Yes, we haven't been offering suits for quite a while now, and I kind of feel like, you know, I I found myself drawn back into it again, and I decided earlier this year that I was going I suppose re-establish my brand again and work with the people that I have been training, and it all kind of started um, because I suppose I felt a sense of responsibility. Sense of responsibility I think that most teachers don't feel. That they feel that their job is just to impart their knowledge to their student, and that's it. That's when their role ends. But what I found is that working with my students, you know, the course they take, that's really just the beginning of the learning experience. You know that I offer all my students a 1 year free mentorship, and the idea behind that is that for the first year that they're you know, applying those new skills, if they have any questions, they can reach out to me and seek my guidance and my help. And so I keep in regular contact with my students. So even students, it could be 2 or 3 years ago, they took a course and they're still reaching out and looking for help and contact. And what I found was that a large majority of my students, like my really, really talented, you know, tailors that I have trained, create these wonderful works, you know, and they're making them for husbands, or they're making them for fathers or brothers, or, you know, neighbors, and they're still trying to hone their craft. And the ones that really made it and can make the garments, and they're as good, if not better, than anything you're going to see on Savile Row, their issue is finding the clients. There's a lot of different skill sets required when running a business, and knowing the business is only one of them. Knowing how to sell, how to reach, how to get your garment to market, your product to market, like that's another skill in itself. And again, whenever I was in New York and I was doing everything myself, I was the salesman, and I was the cutter, and I was the finisher and the presser, and my business wasn't very scalable that time. And what I couldn't find were tailors. I just couldn't find them. You know, the other men in the industry, I'm not going to call anyone out on this video, but there were people who claimed to be like the Savile Row tailors of New York. It didn't compare to Savile Row. I mean, like they worked within the confines of the industry there, which was you had to use a factory. It was like essentially it was made like ready to wear, but it fitted closer to bespoke. I mean, that was what they were doing there, and I didn't want to dilute it, and I didn't want to do made to measure, and I didn't want to start doing off the rack, and so I was tying myself all up into knots, trying to be this true handcraft tailor. And you know, I did find it difficult. You know, I did find it difficult. It was difficult to make a living at it. It was. I mean, you could make a living at it, but having a team, like that's what I always wanted in New York, was to have this team of trained artisans that could make it the way that I wanted it made, and that's what I have now. I mean, like I've got so many like great tailors. You know, that Tom Bennett, fantastic, great guy, my first ever student. Tom, we ain't telling him this, but we've journeyed a long road together, so we have, and we know we're good friends, nothing else. And he was probably one of the first persons that I contacted, and I said, you know, Tom, you know, we've got such, you know, a broad range of skills, even within the school itself, you know, and you know, we've got this core group of tailors, like, you know, we brought everybody together, and they all, essentially everybody sings from the same hymn sheet because they've all been trained by me. So I don't have the issue of, oh, they do things differently and I have to work around how they do it. And they all learn, from me. Like they all learn cutting from me and making from me. So we're all on the same page. So it just makes sense. So we've been teaming up with people. Like I cover London. I make regular trips to London and visit clients there. And we have what we're calling brand ambassadors, like people that I trained in New York City that are helping us to facilitate our clients there as well. So like London and New York were my two cities whenever I'd left the countryside. They're two places that I feel very comfortable in, I suppose, and I've made a reputation in both of them. I think London was certainly more the golden shears, and that's when I really got my breakout there. And New York then, I suppose, was the video series and the clients that I picked up whenever I was in New York. I knew like a lot of my clients were very disappointed when I left New York. I remember one man in particular was just like, I have been searching for a tailor like you for many years now. Now that I found you and you're telling me you're leaving me. I was trying to say to him, sir, I'm not leaving you. I'm leaving New York. And I have a different path that I wish to follow. But now I find myself on a new path. And it's not going to take away from my school at all. Like it's going to enhance that if nothing else. And but yeah, I think there are still people out there that would like to avail of a Rory Duffy suit, and I think they'll like the idea. I think they'll be inspired by the story of the Handcraft Tailor Academy, and like bringing together the best of all my students. We have a great team. I've got a local guy here, Terry from Cavan, so he's from only a couple of miles up the road, and he reminds me a lot of myself in many ways, but like his passion for the industry, and you need a lot of passion, you need a lot of patience, and he has both in spades. So we've got this great team, and if people are still interested and would like to get some suits, they'll need to reach out and ask me, and we'll be happy to facilitate them.
Thank you for that, Rory. I just have a couple last questions. If you weren't a tailor, what would you be?
If it wasn't a tailor, what would I be? It's a good question. I'm not really sure. So if I wasn't a tailor, I wouldn't like to think I'd been a farmer. So I would, no disrespect to my ancestors that were farmers. I don't know. I mean, I'm in the Army Reserves. So, and it's like people are kind of wondering, why are you in the Army Reserves? And it's a popular question. I joined the Army Reserves when I was 17. I was in it until I was 23. And I suppose that introduction to the Army Reserves kind of showed me what Army life was like. And Army life in Ireland isn't terribly exciting. But something like possibly the Ranger Wing would have been interesting, like the Special Forces. And I suppose now that I came back here when I was 35, and one of the reasons why I returned, when I returned, was because I was still young enough to join the Army Reserve. So I'm back in it again. And, it's like, why the Army Reserves, even though it's just like, they give me guns and let me blow up things. That's always exciting. But it's how you push yourself. You have fitness tests that you must pass every year, and we have to do press ups, and then we have to do sit ups, and then we have to do a 2 mile run, and then we have to do a 6.5 mile march, which is actually a run walk, while carrying 14 kgs on your back. So it's very difficult. I actually did mine there last week, and it took me, I think it was about 3 days it took me to recover from it. I couldn't really walk for those 3 days until it finally wore off. But yeah, what would I be? I don't know. I mean, like, I suppose I suppose the Army was something I was always drawn to, or maybe Special Forces, something like that. Or maybe I would have, maybe it would have been the woodwork. I don't know, who knows. But it wasn't to be, whatever it was.
That's true. Okay, and my final question is there anything about the book, your academy, the video series, or anything else that you want people to know?
The book will be made available at some point in the future. A lot of people keep asking me about it, and it's you know, I've sort of been promising the release of this book, I suppose, for 2 years now, and it has taken 4 years to this point to write. And you know what? I'm still not done. I'm just not. Everyone keeps telling me, you know, we should release it and revise it, but like I suppose my idea for the book is that it's like a one-stop book. Buy this book and you will be able to cut any pattern for any size, and that's been the tricky part of it. It's there are so many sizes, you know, there's so many different body variations, and I've been coming up with systems essentially to cut for these individuals, and then you know, you come up with the system, then you got to test the system, you got to make sure it works, and that's a whole other side of the book that we'll be doing, is testing it. And I'm actually the guinea pig for most of these tests, so that I have a very unusual leg figuration myself. I'm knock knee duck foot, and you know, one would suspect that would have been the first, you know, irregularity that I solved, but it actually wasn't. Whenever I was learning cutting, I'm not sure that the people that were teaching me knew that you could actually cut for, you know, all the different legs. There's actually 5 different leg figurations, and there's a different system for cutting each one of them, and that's what the book focuses on. So that's the leg figuration side of it. But then there's the drops, you know, the waist to seat. You know, whenever this, you know, the average or the athletic being 6, and then the portly being 4, and then the corpulent being, you know, the waist is bigger than the seat. And so then what do you do? You know, so it's to answer all the questions that I had. And like, I buy a lot of books, so I do. I buy a lot of former cutter and tailor books, particularly ones that came from that school. It's usually the ones that I buy, and I have most of them. Don't have all of them, maybe one day, but I read them. You know, I buy a book, I read it, and I haven't seen it in there. I haven't seen them talk about the 5 leg figurations that there are, and how you cut a different figuration for each one. Like that I never seen. I have seen it for coats, all right. You know, they'll show you how to change the balance of the coat depending on like whether the person is head forward, stooping, erect, whatever. Like that's been well covered in books, but not the leg figuration. I've always found that interesting. Maybe there is. I'm not saying there isn't. Maybe somewhere. I haven't found it yet. If you found it, you know about it, let me know, because I'd love to hear about it. Love to hear about that book. You know, it could be in another language. It could be in Chinese. It could be in Spanish. You know, it could be in Japanese maybe. You know, there's good tailors in Japan. So I'm not sure I'm sure there are. I'm sure there are out there. But you know, I mean, it will be made available. That's one thing I will at some point in the future. I'm looking at different ideas for it. You know, I'm thinking of maybe doing it as a textbook. You know, printing books is actually quite expensive, and I don't really want to be that guy that travels around, touting his book. You know, having to go on one of these tours and like, and honestly, like I've been to those kind of shows like where somebody sits down and tell you all about like what they've written their book about, and then want you to buy the book at the end. And I don't know. That's something I want to spend my time doing. So whenever it is, like the students who sign up to online courses, they get the book, and that's always the way that it's worked. But at some point in the future, you know, whenever the video series are up, and we've done a video series on the pattern drafting, that's when a book will actually have to be required. So it'll definitely be available if there's a video series available, because you're going to need the book if you're doing videos. So yeah, but we hope to, like, my aspiration is to have any garment you can possibly conceive of making in bespoke. So whether that's like raised top half bands, trousers, that's, you know, that I always wear, waistcoats, double-breasted waistcoats, double-breasted coats, you know, morning coats, overcoats, evening tailcoats, smoking jackets, dinner suits. You know, that there will be a video on my website that will show you how to do that. So that when the questions people ask me, well, how do you learn tailoring? I said, well, you go to the Handcraft Tailor Academy website, subscribe to it, and then you'll see everything you need to know.
That's amazing. Thank you.